welcome everyone. I'm your MC for today, and this is our final in our series on our webinar series for traditional services delivery is dead, how to maximize ARR with an outcome-led professional services delivery function. And today we'll be looking at more of how Precursive does this themselves and also look at the Precursive product in relation to that. So back in February, we launched a playbook with great contributors from the likes of Sage, Cognite, Infosys, and our own team, some of which are presenting today. And hopefully, if you haven't downloaded it already, that's still available online at precursive.com. So do download that when you get a chance. Basically, we created this because we saw that there's getting blurred lines between services and success, particularly in the world of B2B tech and professional services. And when it comes to onboarding, delivery, and ongoing customer engagement, there needs to be much better connections between those teams. So today we'll be looking at how Precursive views this topic internally and how our tool can highlight how you build a successful delivery culture. So with that in mind, let's move on to the agenda. First, we'll be talking about how to scale in your services delivery using repeatable services. Then we'll be looking at time to value as the classic metric of how you measure these things, but then look more to how leaders are viewing first value and outcomes as the more important metrics and how you can differentiate between the two. We'll then be looking at the tool itself and how services delivery is run there. And we'll end with a fireside chat, but there is time throughout for a Q&A function. And on that note, if you'd like to use a Q&A function throughout, we'll probably answer them live. And please ask directly to the group, don't ask individuals, because it'll be myself and Prachi, my assistant, questions to the panelists. So if you could ask them to the whole group, that would be fantastic. Without further ado, let's talk about our speakers. So our first speaker today is Debbie Perrot, our head of PS and support. Say hi, Debbie.
Hi there, bit of background about myself. I've been with the Precursive now 18 months. I've been within the Salesforce ecosystem for about 6.5 years. And I lead the professional services and support team at Precursive. So we do all the implementations, onboarding, optimization services, and managed service contracts, as well as our general support for our customers too.
Fantastic. And next is Anna, and I'm not going to try and say your surname as I'll get it wrong. Say hi.
Thanks, Robbie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar. I'm Anna, head of customer success here at Precursive. I've been with Precursive for about 2 years now, helping our customers derive as much value from the product as possible.
And finally, we have Jonathan, who'll be running the fireside chat at the end, our CEO.
Hi guys, yeah, I'm Jonathan, co-founder and CEO of Precursive. Thanks to everyone for taking the time today. Delighted that we've got a nice mix of businesses joining, and very excited to hear from our panelists, Debbie and Anna, who I know are going to do a wonderful job.
Great. And Jonathan, you want to have a quick mention on the Precursive product side of things?
Yeah, well, I guess less to do with the product and more about the impact that it has on us as a business. So we, like many of you joining the call today, are a technology business. We're a SaaS business. We sell a range of products and solutions into different industries. And so we have both products for customer onboarding and project management, as things for capacity planning, resource allocation, as well as broader professional services delivery, which is known as PSA, or professional services automation. And so kind of what that means is that we, like many of you on the phone today, are continually having to manage demand, flex the capacity of both our services and customer success team to deal with the growth that we're going through. And that means that there's a range of challenges that we face around things like capacity planning, resource allocation, tracking the performance of work, and rolling all of that information up so that our services and customer success organization have a real-time view of what is going on across the business and with our customers. So that's a little bit about the scope of what we're doing.
Great. And it's something that everyone's starting to adopt now as well. We've actually seen some research that came out after ours, but delivering outcomes changes everything, as the Boston Consulting Group saying, and this is really at the ethos, at the heart of all the content we'll be delivering today and what we've been talking about for the last couple of months. But without further ado, let's head over to Debbie and talk about scaling the business with repeatable services delivery. I think you have a poll to start with, Debbie, is that right?
I do, yes, if that's okay. Thank you, Robbie. So our first poll of the day is to ask you, how many types of services does your team have responsibility for? So we were discussing this internally earlier. We have 7 at Precursive, but it'd be really interested to know how many productized deliveries you have within your team. As experts in our products, it's really important that my team's time is maximized in the right areas and that admin and non-productive time is minimized. But I still want to be able to see the whole picture, the health and quality of the delivery and the overall financials, which alongside scaling both the professional service offering and team can be tricky. So as we scale ourselves, I'm basing the strategy on what I need to achieve, what team I need to achieve it, and how I can deliver on that strategy. One key area that we have to embrace is the more that you can standardize what you're doing is to scale. And so establishing various packages for services with built-in tolerances defined for that work, which is always going to be out of scope, will provide you with greater flexibility to still deliver well and on time, but within that set cost.
Great, so let's end that poll there. And if we share the results with everyone now. So we've got 19% for 1 to 3, 33% for 4 to 6, but obviously nearly half of you are saying that you actually have multiple services there. So that's really interesting, probably going beyond the 6 figure. Does that surprise you at all, Debbie?
Yes, very much so. So when it came to setting the key KPIs for the delivery team, I wanted to focus on 3 areas. The first one is maximizing customer value. For me, the most important measure of a project delivery is a final delivery. Did you actually do what you said you would do and what the customer expected? And this is key for your customer to gain value from your solution. So we focus on enabling our customers to use our products to achieve their desired outcomes and realize the value from the purchase. The first value milestone also allows our CS team to drive adoption, consumption, and identify additional upsell or services opportunities through optimization. As your customers' use of your product matures, the possibility of adoption into other areas of their business expands. One of our customers started off with a core team of 100 people using Precursive, and we are now at over 350 users with another deal for expansion in the pipeline. The quality of the service is another key area to focus on. You can build things quickly, or you can build things with a view to building on top of them later, making it as easy as possible to maintain and then spread the knowledge of your product to your customer's core team. This allows you to support any customizations with ease, and you can repeat the use of these customizations with other customers who have the same requirements because you're building them to scale as your customers do. The second area that we focus on is methodology and governance. So managing the expectation of the customer and the timeline of delivery can only be achieved through good governance. What key milestones do you need to make a delivery successful? What kind of team and skills do you need? What type of documentation will give your team the information they need? And what assets do you need to be able to repeat projects without having to reinvent the wheel? Having key KPIs and metrics easily available on a dashboard at any one time means that I can review and have that oversight of my team's deliveries and any external partner deliveries, and then share this with my internal stakeholders. A great example of a repeatable service methodology is our menu of additional services. So we took the 7 most requested type of additional services and bundled these into surface offerings. We then set pricing with summaries of effort and built in some contingency where appropriate. So this enables our customer success team to quickly quote these service offerings to a customer, get agreement from the customer, and then we can slot the work directly into the delivery team's plans. It saved hours of work on the back and forth between sales and CS and services for work that is just repeatable, and we have a good idea of the time needed to deliver them. The final area we focused on is our partner ecosystem. So we feel that a customer shouldn't notice a difference between a delivery from a partner or your own internal team. And that means enabling and supporting your partners to replicate your own team's methods, assets, and approach. You have to invest as much in the partner channel as you do in your own team. And the more they do well, the less escalations you have to resolve. When we decided this at Precursive, we decided to go with a subcontracted delivery approach, whereby one of our Precursive team will be added to the partners delivery team to maintain that quality of experience for the customer. Regardless of which team is leading the delivery, the same resource types, the same skill sets, the same assets and documentation is reused. The KPI measures are the same across all projects. And if your partner does something better than you did, embrace it, use it and wrap it up into your standard delivery model. My mentor, who has scaled his delivery team to supporting over 500,000 small and medium-sized customers, told me that the best way to create a successful partner ecosystem is just to go all in. Treat their needs, their interests, and their ways of working the same as you do your own internally. And most importantly, ensure that they have a growth plan, the same mindset and commitment as you do, and always train and deliver as one team. Remember, you want every customer to be a referable customer. By productizing your service offerings, you can also ensure consistency across deliveries of any type and size, help minimize disruption caused by ad hoc work or change requests, and the customer can clearly see what they're getting, and you can see what's being measured against at the end of the project. Playbooks can reinforce your service culture, provide a way to manage highly complex and simple projects easily, and ensure the right milestones and measures are in place, regardless of the size of the project. Playbooks also help define norms and coach the right behaviours across the team. Finally, you can mitigate risk as the delivery always follows the same process. It helps create that smooth transition across multiple teams as everybody knows what's expected of them at any time. Common questions that PS teams could ask themselves include, how much time should we invest in this customer? Should we be spending time on this? That gets asked quite a lot ourselves internally. And is this work billable or non-billable? Professional services team really need to get these kind of decisions right because they get to connect the customer to the product in a way that no other team can. If you use them for your pre-sales function, then that relationship and connection starts at a really early stage in the customer journey. If a customer has a requirement that the product doesn't have out of the box, you have the ability to not only shape the resolution, but feed it back into your product team. Tell them why the feature is needed, the use case your customer gave, the value it adds to them, and then have it added to your roadmap for a future release. One of the things I really love best about working for Precursive is that we have this ability to take your ideas and then add them into our product as well. Time shouldn't be viewed as billable or non-billable buckets. For us, time is always considered as productive or non-productive. For example, if I spend 4 hours on a customized demo during a pre-sales call, it's 4 hours I can't be spending on a project delivery. But those 4 hours might lead to new sales because now the customer can see that their exact requirement is matched by my software. And if I had to customize a sales demo, can I repeat it and reuse it next time so that I'm adding into my bucket of accelerators and my asset library, and then that means that time is then able to be reused. Another example could be spending time on a reverse demo with a customer who's recently renewed. A reverse demo is the customer taking you step by step through how they use your product. It might sound like dead non-billable time, but actually that additional knowledge of how the customer uses your product enables you to support them better if they have a support issue. It also provides additional advice on how to use the product given their current workflow.
I think Debbie, also just one comment on that around the value of an hour of PA. I think, if any of you have got, customers where, like let's say, for example, you spend an hour and it helps you retain or win a customer, whether it's an hour of services or support or even customer success. And that customer, for argument's sake, and this might be a large revenue number for some and not for others, let's say that's a $100,000 ARR client. Now, in the world of SaaS and software and tech, and perhaps not necessarily in services, that the enterprise value of that contract can be significantly more than that. I mean, for some that would be, worth more than $1 million. So kind of when you sort of take a step back and think about your services team's time, your consultants' time, your customer success team's time, I think looking at it through that lens, you start to think very differently about the true value of time. And I think for us as a business, that's something where, if you've got a, piece of work and it's more complex, are we going to walk away if the customer's not seeing value? Are we going to need to put in more time and effort to do so? Absolutely. Because, realistically, that time is going to pay off significantly more for us over the long term. So I just wanted to add that comment there, Debbie.
Absolutely agree, Jonathan. Like, that's one of the reasons why we focus on the outcome and not necessarily the cost it took us to get there. So customer success is a mindset, not a job title, was how Anna first explained it to me. And we really embrace that culture at Precursive. Sales need support during pre-sales to be successful. Services need support by customer success for training. Customer success need a great delivery to build the customer success plan on. So ensuring that right skills exist at the right time across the customer journey is key for growth. Continual training across the wider team and at all touch points just ensures pure consistency and knowledge of your product. So let me hand over to Anna to expand on adoption and customer success.
Thanks, Debbie. The initial onboarding stage is incredibly important and has a big impact on adoption. So it's key that we have a plan in place. So what are some of the building blocks of a robust success roadmap, as we like to call it? So Debbie's mentioned transitioning. Smooth sales to implementation transition is incredibly important. So your implementation team should understand why your customer decided to buy your product and what they're looking to achieve. You'll need almost a symbiotic relationship between your implementation team, customer success team, and the customer. Your CSM is well versed on the why the customer bought and is able to produce the first draft of the success roadmap based on the existing information gathered throughout the sales process. The CSM is the companion throughout the implementation journey. He shows up to the kickoff call equipped with the relevant information, looking to validate what's already known and present them, the customer, with a map for the implementation process and beyond, so that the customer leaves the meeting knowing that they're in capable hands, and not just of one person at any given time, but the entire team of people dedicated to their success. I'd say tell your customer what they can expect from you and explain what's expected of them. Success is a team sport, and this is when the CSM positions themselves as their partner. Your success map should be broken down into sets of activities designed to help them achieve each individual business outcome. And I would highlight business outcome here, from the immediate low-hanging fruit to long-term outcome, such as reduce time to value by X% or X number of days in year one. All your initial outcome-driven roadmap items or activities that you plan should build up to the long-term goal. And this approach is scalable if facilitated by the right kind of tool that helps you measure and track outcomes at scale. Our team happens to use Precursive OBX to design and share success roadmaps with customers. And I think we have a couple of examples where I can show you what those templates look like. So we build a document based on the initial conversation with the customer that consists of everything that we need to know in terms of challenges, outcomes, and we share this with the customer. So it's something that we collaboratively work with them on. And then on the basis of that, we build the actual success roadmap. So you can see it's an actual plan with dates, with outcomes, and every single activity that leads from one outcome to another that takes them through from the kickoff call to the renewal and beyond. Okay. So what are the actual tangible benefits of a success roadmap? If you think about the customer perspective, they know the ROI at all times. They can see where they started and where they are today and how your teams help them get there. You're making their life easier when managing change internally. You've given them a plan already and provided required resources so that they can plan internally and manage expectations better. Your customer will find it easy to present the business case internally to extend your services or buy more from you, and you'll make them look good. On the other side, there's you. So you can start tracking the impact of the quality of your onboarding on the lifetime value of your customers, which brings the loose ends of different customer lifecycle stages together. Your CS team can prepare and plan ahead of time, going from reactive to proactive. You can start reporting on the outcomes achieved, any blockers, delays, as well as specific and actionable feedback. Forecasting and managing your churn, obviously very important, becomes easier and more reliable. And last but not least, something that really made an impact within our teams is that your sales and CS teams are aligned on the plan and time frame for the customer outcome driven journey, meaning you can work better as a team to support your customer growth. And it gives you a framework for sales and CS partnership, which is key, especially for your strategic customers. That's not to say that we should ignore first time to value. Onboarding should emphasize and reinforce the value proposition that drove the customer to your product in the first place. And that's often reflected in what we track as time to value. In fact, it's one of the most important metrics used to measure the success of onboarding. If you do a simple Google search, it will probably return a definition along the lines of the amount of time between when your customer takes an action, so when they buy from you, and when they see the value of that action, read when they start using your product in a meaningful way. The general assumption is that the shorter the time to value, the higher the customer satisfaction, which we all hopefully measure one way or another. This allows us to set our baseline and intelligently improve our process over time to create additional efficiencies within the project delivery process. Some of the most common first time to value measures could be time from kickoff to go live, from go live to first transaction. Some use usage metrics such as number of monthly active users, among other things. We intently use our own product again, OBX, to track the initial stages of onboarding along with specific time to value measures linked to important value points such as scoping, training, and go live. And I think we have an example of a customer onboarding or implementation plan looks like with those in place. However, it's worth mentioning that time to value is often, if not always, intentionally set as a customer-centric metric, but over time it might turn into an internal performance measure. Why is that? It's because it inherently limits the definition of the scope of the success of your customer to a single data point. Long-term success requires long-term strategic planning. So if you think about it, your product and services will evolve and your customers will grow. To ensure long-term continuous value, it's imperative that you lay out a success pathway that aligns your product growth with your customers' growth. So it'll be interesting to hear from everyone. What does first value look like to you? What do you track? So I think we have a poll.
Great, yeah, Prachi, if you start. And if you feel like answering other, feel free to put what other is in the chat. Looks like we might have a pretty clear-cut winner though. So I'll end the poll. I'll share results. Hopefully everyone can see that on their screen now.
Yeah. No, I am not surprised. Yeah, no,
so
great.
Clear winner with Go Live with over half the there. No other, in fact. So most people use the three we provided. So Go Live 56%, first transaction completed 24%, revenue recognized 20%. And you say you're not surprised there. Do you think Go Live is frequently most people's end goal there for first value?
I think so. I think it's the most common one, which again, I don't want to emphasize something else. This is very important to know that your customers went live, right? But it definitely shouldn't end there. Which brings me to my next point. So how do we transform success delivery from that superficial single data point driven to long-term and more meaningful? I'd argue we shouldn't stop at time to value. Our customers don't buy our software or services for the sake of it. They're buying outcomes your product or service promised to help them achieve. With this in mind, we should be able to provide a customer with a pathway to success. And that should consist of a number of customer-defined business outcomes they want to achieve over a period of time. The success roadmap will take them from the kickoff to the renewal. And from there, it will provide a repeatable framework for you and the customer to continue deriving value from your product. So repeatability here is incredibly important. Establishing a framework and having a plan as opposed to single data point, incredibly important, makes such a difference.
Great. And so now we're going to the Q&A portion for this first part before we dive into some of the Precursive tools itself. And so we actually have a question to start with, but I'd also like to draw people's attention to the Q&A function. Please use that now to get your questions in. You can direct them to any one of our panelists today. But the first one we have is, and it's fairly long, so bear with me, philosophy for measuring productive utilization rather than just chargeable is clear, but it's also clear it must be structured and limited. Ultimately, a PS organization has revenue targets to meet through direct chargeable utilization. So what's your take in building in time and structure for value add activity that's not chargeable? And is this inherently unpredictable? There's a couple of further questions, but should we answer that one first? Debbie, would you want to field that one?
Yeah, so it's absolutely unpredictable. And I'd also challenge that whilst you should have revenue targets, and myself and my team do as well, it shouldn't just be focused on the revenue target, because as we spoke about earlier, 1 hour of free time could make your customer renew. So it's not an hour of services that you've charged, but you've just gained a renewal of £500,000. So it's got to be in relation to what that work is doing. I don't particularly have a measure between productive and chargeable time. I look at the whole picture together. I think it's important to do that.
And they say, do you pick a percentage and say, oh, up to 10% of capacity can be used for non-chargeable PS? Or is there a line that you draw between PS and CS?
If I'm honest, when we're planning in our hiring decisions, we have, I think it's about 8 to 10% of time that we set aside in that bucket. But often myself and Anna will have a conversation and we'll just put a value on the piece of work that we're discussing, and we'll do it one by one. So moving forward to make it more scalable, it's probably good to build it in, but I also think that you do have to make a decision as well.
I'll just add a couple of comments there on that one as well. So I've observations from across a number of companies where this topic has come up. I mean, some companies have a very numerical approach where they basically take, a percentage off everyone's time for holidays, a percentage off for admin, a percentage off for pre-sales, and then what's left over is what they consider to be their billable utilization time. And then those other categories of work, so for example, pre-sales is more often being considered, for example, like productive time as a part of the metrics that companies use. What's interesting though is the number of organizations that we work with have actually lowered their utilization targets, their billable utilization targets, because they really want to focus on the quality of the work and also the workload equality across their team, because what they've recognized is that retaining their services staff, retaining their people is hugely important. If they lose those, it takes so much momentum, so much wind out of their sails. But also, if the quality of the work ultimately is higher, then they will win more work, they will retain more work, they will deliver more, renewable contracts, and ultimately the revenue for the organization and the services revenue, the PS revenue, will grow. It's not a perfect science, and it's, consulting and services is often, as clients put very eloquently, is a blend of art and science. But I think those are some of the things that I've at least heard.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. I'm getting a few questions myself. Keep asking the questions, but if you could direct it to the whole group, that'd be great, because then people can see it in the open question section. But I think I've got one for Anna here. So what would be a good example of first value versus an actual outcome? Surely they're one and the same in some instances.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like to think of first value as something, relating to indirect measures that we use to indicate healthy adoption. So the assumption here is always that if they use it, they must be getting value from it. So that could be, you could measure full adoption. So, your monthly active users, if that's 100% of, what you sold, you're in a good place. It could be, as we mentioned, first transaction was made. So very easy to measure items, but they indicate healthy adoption as opposed to value delivered in business outcome for the customer. When it comes to outcomes, think about a couple of good examples. billable utilization, right? So you might, at the business, your customer might have a goal to increase the billable utilization, let's say from 60 to 70% per month. And that results in about 100 additional billable hours per month. So how much do you think that 100 billable hours is actually worth to them? That's a real outcome, tangible, important thing to their business. Another example could be time to value itself. So let's say they want to reduce year one churn, and by decreasing the time to value from, let's say, 50 to 30 days. Think about the impact on the customer satisfaction and time that can be invested in new opportunities that they're gaining by achieving that. That's a real tangible impact to the business, and that's how I would classify an outcome.
Great answer. And we've got another question. So typically, how many client implementations should a PSC be involved in at any given point in time, so it does not impact the efficacy and quality of the delivery? And also, how many clients should a CSM be engaged with at any given point in time? I'll leave that to the floor. Who wants to take that one?
I can definitely contribute. I mean, I can definitely speak to the number of customers onboarding per CSM. That will greatly vary depending on the type of customer. Obviously, we all work with segments, right? We segment our portfolio, and each segment will require a different level of attention. And there are different programs for them. So depending on that, if you have very, large, complex customers that pay extra for your attention, then you definitely want to have too many of them in one go, and that should be distributed evenly throughout the team. I wouldn't myself want to manage more than 5 of those customers on top of some others. So definitely always worth checking with your team where they are in terms of capacity. And that's why it's important to have a plan. So when I talked about success pathway, it's important to understand it from the customer perspective, but it's also so useful to you because you can tell how much time you will need to manage that customer. So it's so much easier to manage your team and know what capacity you have and how many more customers you can take care of at any given time.
Or if you're approaching burnout, right, as well, you don't want people to be burning out as well. So it might not be so how many customers should they have, but how many customers does it typically take to burn out one of your CSMs?
Exactly.
Sorry, Debbie, did I interrupt you there?
No, at all. I was going to say, I completely agree with that. One of the great things about having your project at a granular level is instead of thinking about having a consultant for 40 hours over the next 8 weeks, you actually know you need 10 hours on the first Tuesday and 15 hours on the second Wednesday. And as you overlay those plans one by one, you can actually see if overall there's capacity. So no project is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We wish they were, but they're not. But I think definitely having that view of what's available and what's needed at what time enables you to not hit attrition rates, keep your staff happy, and have a consistent delivery.
Yeah, I'd build on that. So I think many organizations, as they grow, they move from a capacity planning, when the question around, how many projects should someone have? We very often see and talk to companies where they say, oh yeah, we manage capacity well. And we say, well, how do you do it? And they say, well, it's a ratio of projects to people, e.g. Jonathan can handle 5, Debbie can handle 4. And that kind of works for them up to a certain point. Where it falls over is like, if you, as Debbie was saying, if you layer the time that they need to do things, then once those projects start all backing up and certain things are happening at the same time, that's where you run into problems. So for example, in our organization, we can't have lots and lots of clients all going live at the same time because it requires a certain level of oversight at that point in time. You can't be running 3 solution workshops at half a day a clip, on the same day for the same person. So I think that that move from like a one-dimensional, let's say Tetris view of the world, like 1 project, 1 person, or 5 projects, 1 person, moving to a much more 3-dimensional view of the world is what many organizations aspire to.
Great. So there's going to be a chance for more Q&A at the end after we show you the next piece of how we do it in our product internally. But this question is the last one I'll provide now, and it's had 3 likes, so it's a lot of people wanting this one to be answered. JT asks, a big thing for me is seeing PS identify and ask about the why customer outcome importance in their paid engagements. If the customer sees this understanding, they will share more expected outcomes and business benefits that CS can then focus with their responsibilities. How much would you agree with that, guys, about how PS needs to sort of identify the customer outcomes, understand the whys behind that language, speak in the customer voice?
It's really important. Also for us, we often have the services team and the CS team attend the requirement session so that we can make sure we understand both elements of the why before we start the engagement. It really sets you up for a good delivery at the end.
Yeah, I'd add for that, like getting like there's a, what is it, the 5 whys framework. But a good example of this is we were talking to a company and they said, we want to improve our delivery time by 25%. We said, why? They said, well, in doing that, we will recognize, because they're an MRR type business, so they recognize the revenue at go live. So for example, if it takes them 10 days, they recognize it 10 days later. Or they start recognizing revenue. But actually the real why was because, their goal was to grow in a very large business unit, a software business unit within a conglomerate. And that profitability, because it's a SaaS model, would enhance the overall profitability and value of that conglomerate, which had other business units that were very low margin. So it was actually, the real why was, we have this SaaS business model. We want to make it as successful as possible. That will drive valuation for our business overall. The way that we get there is improving time to launch by 25%.
Great, thanks guys. And like I said, there'll be more time to speak and ask questions at the end of the session, and we'll stay on if anyone has any further comments or queries. But we're back to Debbie, and we're looking at how we do this in our own product. Debbie, off you go.
Woohoo.
So this is how we use our full suite of products to run my professional services team. So one key element of being on the Salesforce platform is the visibility to see upcoming forecasted project work based on late stage opportunities. The templated playbooks mean I know exactly how much time is needed overall for that delivery, and importantly, exactly what time is needed for each task for each project team member. So that view of forecasted needs, alongside being able to see the existing capacity of my team, means I can make those decisions on allocation, hiring needs, and outsourcing requirements from one space. So here's an upcoming soon to close opportunity. I can see the forecasted start date for the end of the month, and from the related list, I can see a project and 2 related boards. This was created quickly using automation within Salesforce, so standard flow. And when I created the project, it also created my playbook for me. So now all I actually need to do is resource that project. So let's open up the project record. Just clicking through for you. So here we can see the overall project summary. We can see the account, opportunity, and the type of project. And I can already see that I've earmarked this to be delivered. But I want to check the capacity of my team and see where the best resource would be. So still within the project record, I can have a look to see at the resource plan. Excuse me. If I click on the request mode, I can see what project roles I need to allocate, and all of these have been automatically created based on that playbook. So let's go ahead and allocate the lead implementation manager role. If I scroll across the 10 weeks of delivery, and it is easier to do this, I've just made it as hard as possible in this demo, I can see that Walter does have capacity for these weeks. So let's go ahead and assign it to him.
You're just a fan of that trackpad.
I like it. I'm old school, so it works for me. Then I can also go back into the request mode and assign the other project role to Javier. It's that simple to allocate the forecasted work to my team. Also, once resources have been assigned from this project plan view and my team is completed, they'll all receive notifications to say they've been allocated to that project. So they can have a look to see what they'll be working on. And this ensures that smooth visibility amongst the team and cuts down on the need for internal meetings to make allocation decisions. We also use the OB exports to record all of our pre-sales activities and required time. So the capacity view that I'm looking at in the screen is all of my team's capacity because we plan all of our activities out. You can also see the total overview of resources and where they're planned using the Precursive plan view. You don't have to do it within the project. If I look at the workspace tab, I can see that all the tasks have been assigned to those resources and that we're ready to kick off the project. Sorry, it's just refreshing. So you can see Walter's been allocated and Javi has been allocated to his tasks as well. This view is my internal process, but what I also want to be able to share with the customer is a quick and easy to see output of their team's responsibilities and their time needed during the project. Collaboration and communication with those key stakeholders is essential for any well-managed project. So having the ability for your customer's team to quickly hone in on when they need to be available helps make that a much smoother process. As your internal and external project tasks can be linked using our cross-board dependencies, when the internal project is updated, so can the customer's tasks be used B2. And you can take it one step further and share the customer project plan in a Salesforce community and then interact with the customer, which allows them to update and mark items as completed on their side as the project progresses, which is a really nice touch.
Fantastic, that's a great view. And I think you've got some further boards to share now as well.
Yep.
I think just one comment on that, Debbie, would be like, I think you've really been pushing this, haven't you, in your services organization, which is this idea that not all dependencies are created equal, and that whilst we internally care about the project plan and all of the tasks and the things that we need to do, we really just want to highlight or curate, if you will, for the clients, like what it is that they need to do and when, you know, in the various weeks, and what types of subject matter experts they need to bring to bear, as well as the amount of time they'll need to spend. And I think that's given your customers like more reassurance, hasn't it, during those implementations?
Definitely. And actually the requirement to have an easier to read project plan came from a customer feedback after a project retro. So they pointed out to us that they found that the plan too messy and it was too confusing to know what they needed on their side. So we've really tried to make that clear and concise, make that go much more smoothly. So another key area of insight that I think is needed for successful service delivery is the ability to quickly see the health and the sentiment of a project, but alongside key metrics. So here we're using our board health feature for this. So on a weekly basis, the project manager or the lead implementation consultant will update the board health record to highlight any issues on the projects. And then we use that alongside the plan to complete overrun hours. So as a manager, I can see that there's several items I might want to have a look at. I can see that we've got 24 hours overall across the 6 projects that we're overrunning on, but I can also see I've got the hours I've yet to consume. The project at the top that's got the red health score also has a sentiment that makes sense. So I can see it's been delayed. I know that's going to have an effect to the project timeline. It might also have effect on my capacity, but I can also see there's 23 hours left in that project. So overall, that's the right rating, and it enables me to just from a report, have a quick look, and then I can move on to the next one. And the benefit of the dashboards is anybody in CS and the management team can have a look as well. One area you can't afford to not have access to is the project financials. So within Precursive, we visualize this on our budget page. The figures used here are rolled up from the opportunity, the plan time, actual submitted time, and we've got a couple of custom fields here as well for the overrun. This is a sample project, so we can quickly calculate how you track your margins, the profit and the cost for both fixed price and time and material deliveries. You can see how that planned budget allocation works. So if we have a look here, there's 149 hours budgeted, and I've got 119 hours which were planned, and there's 19.69 hours left of plan time. If I then look across at the actual column, I can see that we've already consumed 140 hours and there's 9 hours planned. So we've got a project overrun of about 10.94 hours, and that represents a 7% overrun on the project. But if we go back to that value outcome that Anna mentioned earlier, I know that my delivery time is slightly over to finish, and I can see exactly how much more time I need to generate that outcome, but I can choose to go ahead and do it. The My Precursive page is where you can record your time and book holidays from. So if you're a manager or supervisor, you can also approve timesheets, expenses and holidays from this one-stop shop page. Every time you're booked onto a project or allocated a task in the Connect mode, the system will update your timesheet with planned hours for that project for that day. You just then have to quickly go in and add in your actual time and submit your timesheets, or if you're using the Connect mode, you can add it into the task and it will do it for you. Once you submit your timesheet, that's what we're using to run up onto the project financial, those costs that we just saw. So this is real-time cost and revenue data, enabling you to make real-time database decisions. So the next slide is my favorite slide. So this is my services team dashboard that I use internally. I check it on a daily basis. It forms the basis of all of my senior management reporting. And it shows me my actuals, my planned, my forecasted information across the key areas of time, cost, capacity, utilization, and timesheet submission. So the top row of the data is all about my active projects. It's implementations, additional services, and managed service customers. If I then want to drill down into the reports, I can see additional data about the cost, time, and sentiment across any of those projects. Moving down my dashboard, the second row of data is all about my forecasted work. So I can see my upcoming pipeline, and I can also see what I've got planned as forecasted against the partner delivery team. So this is, again, really key. I can see my kickoff by weeks, and I know how many I'm looking at. Based on that templated playbook that I've got, across those forecasted projects, I can immediately see the total number of time I need at each role to cover all of those projects. So as a services team manager or a resourcing manager, I'd be looking at this report daily, so I know what I'm due to allocate out and then book those resources onto those projects. So going back to the question we had about pre-sales work and being, if it's productive or not, I have a report that shows all of my pre-sales work by customer, by opportunity stage, and also by opportunity value. So this is what I use to make those decisions. And I've got everything in one place. So immediately, if there is a query about if I've had enough time or not enough time, I can take it straight from here. It's great data to have, for example, in hiring decisions and when planning the work as well, because if I know that our average pre-sales time per project this FY is 10 hours, I can make that allocation because it's based on real-time data. And as the pipeline is being generated by sales, I can compare my trend on pre-sales time to the demand gen trend to see if they align and where there might be any overlaps. Finally, I can see the two reports based on utilization. So I can compare my forecasted utilization with my actuals. Both reports enable to split that by billable versus non-billable. And in an upcoming product release, we will see utilization by time code space. So that will be really cool. I've also got a dashboard report for overdue unsubmitted timesheets across my team, but I'm not going to name and shame them on here, although sometimes I would like to do that. So that's how we use Precursive in our professional services team. So let me hand you over to Jonathan to see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, just one additional comment on that. I think was super valuable just from my perspective. I mean, we're living in Salesforce a lot in our business, and so I'm looking at metrics across various different departments: sales, marketing, CS, and of course services. And I think what I like to think, Debbie, you might tell me wrong, but is that I don't come to you asking stupid questions, right? Because I can see everything that's going on without having to ask. So that gives me as someone who's looking to grow the business in a, let's say, fiscally responsible way, gives a lot of security. So, you know, those data points are really, really helpful. And they've been super helpful as we've been looking at our hiring plans and scaling up the organization as well.
Definitely agree, yeah.
Great, so this is a final chance. We've got about 8 minutes left, so there's plenty of time to ask some great questions. So if you've got any questions for Debbie, Anna, or Jonathan, please use the Q&A function at the bottom, and we'll be chatting in the background. Led by Jonathan, because he's good at that.
Really? Okay, cool.
Well, no, we're just saying awkward silence. Yeah, we can put cameras on to show that we're actually here.
So it's real
And real
people.
people.
We're all here.
I sit in a very dark room, and when I switch the lights on, it looks like I'm in a tanning salon. So, what other questions have we had come in, Robbie?
I think we have one here, and I think it's more for Debbie. So how would you, I think this was mentioned right at the beginning of your spiel, but how would you monitor the quality of partner delivered work using those kind of tools?
We actually make our partners use our own tools. So we share an OBX board with them so that we have the same visibility, and we use our own template. So it comes back to that delivering as one team. So everything that my team use internally, our partners use, and it gives that consistency across them. And it also enables us to like tweak the delivery. So I wouldn't expect the time taken to be the same, but I would expect the steps to be the same. So that's a good way to monitor it. Like if you do everything, then you're comparing apples with apples. And I think that's really key when you're thinking about your partner-led deliveries.
Great, and we've got another question here. So do you have your CSMs do timesheets? If so, how does that work in terms of segmentation of their time?
Love the question.
I love Ollie's questions. Ollie's got the best questions on this.
Yeah,
keep them coming, Ollie.
So there are two types of time, right? For us, it's billable and non-billable, and there's also what we are focused on is time spent on growth-related activities. That's where we are as a company. That's what we're trying to do. So we need to monitor that whatever time we spend every month, we look back and we basically assess, okay, was this the right way to spend this time? Is this going to affect what we do next month? Do we need to reshape what we do week on week? So definitely yes, on every billable project, on any project that requires heavy hand-holding around onboarding, any time spent on producing assets, resources that we also do, training. We want to know how much time we spend preparing for training, because that's what we're trying to optimize over time. So yes, definitely focus and record time on everything and split it by growth related and just productive.
Yeah, but so CSMs do record time on billable projects. So if we've got a PS implementation, the CSM will record time on the work that they do in it, because we consider that like that's a cost to the project. But Anna, you've also got your CS team not doing a timesheet necessarily, but tracking, spending their time on CS related activities, whether it's, growth related activities, training, things of that type as well, right?
Yeah, there's project related, so onboarding, and customer related, and anything operational as well. So yes, we do track time. We use timesheet for all of that.
Cool, great question from Mel. So where does your PS services begin/end and your CSM services begin?
On an implementation, we kind of mix it up. So the CS always kicks it off and makes sure that the customer's outcomes are documented and decided at the beginning, and then services take over. And then we bring them in about this type of UAT testing / training, so that the customer is re-engaging with them, and also that knowledge from the project is moving downstream into the CS team. And then to the end, when we enter, that will always be like a joint delivery between CS and services, and then CS really take over after that hypercare period for us.
Yeah, my comment on that would be like the language you use in your organization, Mel, can often be very evocative. So for example, a lot of companies use the term handovers, and if you're a customer, you don't want to be handed over, right? Like the customer views you as one vendor or one partner. So I mean, and by the way, I stole this off someone else, all the best ideas. So shout out to Jay Nathan on this one, but he was using this word transition, right? So you want to be able to transition between teams, because the way that we view that customer journey in that initial period is it's not always linear, right? It's, you know, people lean in and lean out of that process. So I would like to say that it's continuously evolving, right, Anna? Like a lot of what we've been looking at is how we, in CS, how and when CS gets involved in training, or whether services does training and things of that ilk.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say, especially for bigger customer, it makes so much more sense to show up as a team, right? So it's not just making your life easier just to be a part of the process, but the customer is looking at a team of people trying to make them successful. And that's a great experience, right? So, and that's what we want to promote.
Cool. And then from Prakash, we have a question for Debbie. As a leader of the PS team, from the employee engagement and morale perspective, how do you ensure that the PSCs, so services consultants, remain motivated despite carrying out the same repeatable tasks across projects? Smiley face, great question.
I guess like, although the tasks are probably the same, like one of the things I love about being in services is your customer's not the same. Ultimately, the customer does use the system for resource capacity, but the use cases are sometimes really different. So I think that we're in that stage where we still have some small, medium customers, and we have enterprise customers, and they're completely different. So although the task might be a solution discovery session, you might have completely different things that come out of that and requirements that come from that. So I think it's just about ensuring when you are planning your projects, it is good to use the same team if they work well together, but you also do have to mix and match it up to make sure you do keep your team motivated. So it's very tricky, but I think if you work at it and you take into account what they want to do, so when you're doing your personal development plans, ask them what they want to do for the next year. And if you can accommodate it, because that will just keep them motivated.
I'd make a couple of comments on that as well, right? So if, for example, I don't know your form of delivery, but if it's a very repeatable, like if you're selling and delivering one product or a handful of products and the tasks are always the same, the mechanics of them are the same, then if the administration of that work that you ask that staff to do, so whether that's tracking it in a spreadsheet, in a timesheet system, in a PSA solution like Precursive, it better be easy to do, because there's nothing worse for a consultant, for any of us, if you've got a repeatable task and then the admin of that task is a nightmare. And I've talked to people in consulting where they took an afternoon to do their timesheets and they can't do it in the week, so they've got to do it on the weekends, and that's just horrendous and painful. So I think we use a phrase like automate to be human. Shout out to Robbie who talks about that, where like automation is about like taking away the manual burden for your team. We were talking to a company recently and we said that they're a marketing automation provider. They have a service wrapper and they're going to be working with us. And we said like, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want to give to your team? And they amazing answer. They were like, time back. We want to give them time back, not to spend on the work, not to spend on the admin, but to spend with the customer. Thanks, Peggy.
Peggy, nicely wrapping it up there. Thank you. Great session.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peggy.
I think that's it, right? Mic drop, according to...
I think we're done. We're at the hour, so I know some of you are on the California coast as well, so you might be having some nice 10 a.m. meetings whilst the rest of us want to go for their dinner. So thank you to Anna and Debbie. Great session. Thank you, Jonathan, for the questions as well. as I always say, make sure you get the playbook that this is all based on. We're closing out this era of our outcomes at the moment as we move on to our next exciting section, which will be about customer success and customer onboarding benchmarks. But you can get all this content at precursive.com. Head over to the resource section. It's all free and it's all great. So please do head over there. And thank you for your time. Thank you for joining, and have a great either day or evening.